We're here now at the Grant Birthplace Museum in Point Pleasant, and joining us is the docent of the museum, Loretta Fuhrman. Loretta, how long has the birthplace been officially a museum?
Since 1936.
Now, I believe that Grant and his family lived here for, Grant lived here for what, less than a year?
Yeah, Grant was only 11 months old when he left, but the family married, moved into the building in 1821 and left in 1823.
What can you tell us about the building we see today compared to what it looked like back then?
Well, the building today is much nicer, and I often wonder what Grant would think if he came back today to see this. This one room that we're standing in measures 16.5 by 19 feet, and this was the entire home when the Grant family lived here. And as I said before, it was built in 1817. His parents married, rented the little house, and by the way, they only paid $2 a month rent to live here. Ooh. And then Grant was born the next year on April the 27th, 1822. And when Grant was 11 months old, they left and moved to Georgetown, Ohio. And whoever moved into the home after the Grants left added the 2 small back rooms that we have as you enter into the building.
Now, Loretta, I understand that there are some items in the museum that actually belong to the Grant family, including a corner hutch.
Correct. That was given to the Grants when they married and moved into the building. And then we have a boot under the spinning wheel that was made by Grant's father in 1826. And if you look at the bottom of the boot, you'll see little wooden pegs holding the sole on. And then you also see a lot of nails that they put in the heel to keep it from wearing down so rapidly.
That's amazing. Now, what about this little trunk here on the floor? What is that with the initials JRG?
That was made by Grant's father, Jesse Root Grant, and General Grant took it to West Point and kept papers and documents in it.
What about the outfits that are hanging here on the wall? Several dresses and some hats.
The clothing on the wall, all but that hat and the dress beneath it, but did not belong to the Grants, but the remainder of the clothing were the Grant families. And then the pillowcase that's on the pillow was one of Grant's mother's. And I have one more thing that belonged to the Grants, and that's the wooden piece of wood before the fireplace with the hole in the center. And that's a piece of the water line that Grant's father buried beneath the ground from the spring on the hillside down to the tannery to be able to get the water from the spring to his business. And he took sections of logs that were no wider than the blade on the old hand auger, and he drilled out the center of each section. And then he seated them in the sand until the inner holes, the center hole, matched up with each other. He took clay from the creek bank and sealed each crack and covered them over with earth so that the water would flow through the center.
Now, Loretta, in this room itself, was this the same floor that U.S. Grant would have crawled on as a baby?
Yes, the floors are original. The walls were redone in 1936 when this opened as a museum, and they were put back just as they were when the Grants lived here. The door here going out to the back room was their back door, but we'd like for people to notice how wide each board is that made up the door. And the door in the front has been replaced, and it's called a Christian door.
Why is that?
Because of the cross in the top of the door. A lot of people call them Christian Bible doors. They feel the 2 bottom panels look like our Bible being opened. And then the brick in the fireplace are the original brick. However, the fireplace was rebuilt in 1936 using the original brick. And all the window panes, except the few in the front that have been broken and replaced, are all the original windows.
Now, something really unusual about this house. Now, I don't ever remember hearing about another president's birthplace that had this happen. This house was actually put on a barge and moved down the river after he became president.
In 1890, the government put logs and skids under this front room just the front room, leaving the 2 little back rooms here because they weren't part of the original. And they pulled this room to the river and put it up on the barge and took it up and down the waterways for people to see the President and General's birthplace. And then they put it up on the back car of a train and pulled it to Columbus, Ohio. And it sat up on the fairgrounds until 1927. And that year, the Ohio Historical Society became interested in making it into a museum. And when they came down to purchase the property, however, they had found a 2-story frame house had been built on this foundation while this house was traveling. Now, the state of Ohio had to buy a lot on the street behind us and move that 2-story frame house before those people would consider giving up the original foundation and location. All this transpired. The house was brought back, relocated, and opened into a museum in 1936.
Loretta, you see a lot of people come through these doors. What are people telling you? What do they think about those efforts to have Grant removed from the $50 bill?
Well, they think it's terrible, and they don't want it moved. They want it left just as it is, and so do I.
Thank you very much. In Point Pleasant, this is Clermont County Today.
Thank you.